Hello and welcome to Season of War. Tonight I am excited to be part of the team bringing you the round 4 matchup from the Slambo GT. Tonight I'm joined in the commentary booth, we'll call it, the digital booth, by our own Zach Aaron. Zach, happy to have you. How are you doing tonight?
Doing just peachy. How about you, Jord?
Doing well. Excited to have you. This is your first time on doing commentary, so I'm looking forward to it. Always had a blast. We had a blast actually playing an intense game, or a very exciting game yesterday. So that was yesterday, right? Yeah, feels like forever ago already. But we had a great game at another GT. But tonight we're going to be talking all about Slambo. And again, this is round 4. We got Elijah from the Austin Weird Knobs playing his Seraphon against Marcus from the Dallas Defenders and his Soulblight Gravelords. So two club or guys representing their clubs at the Slambo GT. So I don't know, Zach, if you're super familiar with the Texas scene down there, but they have some great rivalries between the cities and whatnot. So it's so cool to see just the great communities they have down there. It's really cool to be a part of.
Yeah, it's nice when you can have just a huge compact population like that, where you can just have an awesome scene of players all around from different cities and get to build those rivalries, right? So
yeah,
maybe one day up here in
I know,
Ontario, we'll see.
We got to challenge some of the other cities to get their GTA. We obviously have the advantage in population, but I know we got some great Niagara boys, guys all over the place, London as well. I know there's a scene up in Ottawa, but we don't see much of the Ottawa guys. I know there's some guys out in Barrie as well, so great crew all over Southern Ontario. Great playing with everyone. But I want to give a couple of quick shout outs. First and foremost to our channel partners. These are two great local game stores. If you're in Canada, check out our own local store, X Planet Games, here in Mississauga. Great online store as well. They're actually hosting an event next weekend. I won't be attending, but I'll probably be popping by with my daughter at some point to say hi. And if you're in the US, check out Warpfire Minis, a great store down there, runs events down in the States, and a great web store as well. So definitely check them out if you're looking for Warhammer product or whatever it may be. And just another big thank you to both these stores and community pillars for all that they do, helping us out. Last but not least, always want to give a big shout out to all our premium members. Everyone joining us tonight in the chat, thank you so much for joining tonight. Hope you're going to enjoy this exciting round 4 matchup with us. So this is game 1 of day 2, final rounds of the tournament. Both these players are undefeated, so this will be a big one. But also, if you're watching this back, not live in the future, we appreciate you and thank you for your time. But Zach, any initial thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I think we have the best written book, probably versing off against the most juiced book that has been released for AOS. I think it's actually relatively evenly matched, just because the -1 damage in this case won't be too impactful, along with the Seraphon Slender Lizards. But it's always a tough one going up against those lizards, so it could go either way.
No, always is a tough one. I also want to give a final shout out to our lovely table boss, Josh, who is going to be relaying us info throughout the game. Already, it looks like our players have gotten started. So we will be relaying and keeping you guys up to date. Thanks to Josh for all his help and everything he does in making this stream run smoothly as possible. So just gotta show some love to our lovely table boss.
The unsung heroes.
Yes, for sure.
And behind the scenes.
Yeah. But we are into turn 1 already, so we have, it sounds like Seraphon has given the turn to Soulblight Gravelord, so we're in the Soulblight hero phase right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and Soulblight chose Frosh's Advance for their first tactic.
Nice.
And it seems like both parties rolled for heroic leadership here, and the Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon got theirs, and so did the Engine of the Gods. So they're both up CP on each one of those guys.
Nice, yeah. 4 CP for Seraphon then, with that bonus one. Not like they won't have enough when it comes to their turn.
Yes, I don't think I've played against a single Seraphon player that's used all their CP in a turn in AOS 3 yet, so
Yep,
I think they would have to have their work cut out for them,
for
especially
sure.
in the first battle round.
Unless they're playing Luminath and counting them double, then maybe they'll run out.
Exactly. Exactly. Um,
And
yeah,
worth.
we also.
Oh, sorry. Just wanted to say it was worth mentioning. The mission today is tooth and nail. So this is the no deep striking mission. So we're kind of that weird zigzag deployment that is all too common in this GHB. But 4 objectives spread over to the center of the table quarters. So no center objective, which is kind of, always an interesting one when it's kind of spreads them out more. Is what I'm trying to say, and that's I think it always an interesting dynamic that's different from a lot of missions.
Yeah, yeah, it really kind of flips the table around just because in most cases you always have to push up, or there's always at least some center objective that you have to go for, except for maybe Feral Foray, that's common in packs. But this one you actually have one in your home, and then you have 2 that you can go to each edges of the maps, and you don't even have to go over into your opponent's territory to get a hold 1, hold 2, or hold more. So it definitely makes it interesting.
Hmm. Yeah, and we can see already. So into the movement phase, the dogs, the Soulblight. What are they called? Why am I blanking on them already?
Direwolves.
Direwolves. That's it. So the Direwolves are tagging that top right objective right in front of, obviously all those big Stegodons for the Seraphon. So we'll see how long those guys last.
You want to take us through the Soulblight list, George?
Yeah, I'll pull that up now. Oh, that's the Seraphon one. So here's the Soulblight one. Marcus is playing the Virtus Dynasty. He's got a Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon as his general. So that's big body, and the trait he's taken is the Hunter Snare, which is allowing that Vampire Lord to count on objectives equal to the number of wound or his wound characteristics. So rather than just being 5 for a monster, he's counting for 14, I believe it is, wounds on that Zombie Dragon. So an extra big body helping to cap objectives is nice. Mm-hmm. And he's got Flaming Weapon. And then we see he's also got Manfred, who's got Amethystine Pinions. Manfred obviously famously has his sneaky teleporting tricks at the beginning of the combat phase to stay safe and dance out of the way. It's funny, all these heroes now just getting moved in the hero phase looked like they were coming out of that spooky terrain piece, their castle. But so Amethystine Pinions is a double move, or it's plus 6 inches to movement. So Manfred could be extra speedy. Belladama is a great spellcaster in Soulblight. She also has Amethystine Pinions. There is a Necromancer with Decrepify. Main thing he's going to be probably wanting to cast is Van Hell's Dance Macabre on, I would assume, those Death Rattle Skeletons who, when they activate, will be bringing more skeletons back to their unit, which is pretty cool. So when you're double activating, yeah, it really takes advantage of that. And then there are the 2 units of Direwolves, as we mentioned, and a unit of 20 Graveguard that we just saw shuffled up the table on the left side. Not necessarily, there are some staples in here that we see in the typical Soulblight list, like the Graveguard, Direwolves, and Vampire Lord. They're all not uncommon, but we don't often see the Death Rattle Skeletons. Often, a lot of people have been gravitating towards the zombies. So I am really excited to see how these skeletons do myself.
Same here. I think they're still pretty strong, but they just get overshadowed by the pure wound effectiveness and point effectiveness of zombies. I can also pump out a fair amount of damage and just have great utility. But I think skeletons definitely have a strong place in Soulblight, especially paired with the Van Hells. So very, very excited to see how that goes.
Yeah. We actually have a Soulblight army coming to the channel very soon. That's been commissioned by Art W Studio, so we're super excited to bring that in. I think it's actually going to ship out to us tomorrow, Zach. So we'll be seeing that on the table, getting to play with that very soon. Awesome. And I know we've got 40 skeletons coming, so I'm again very excited to see how these guys play today. Maybe pick up some tips and tricks here.
Yeah. I might play them myself, even though I know people are waiting for like Fire Slayers and a few of the armies that I run, but we'll see. Getting into the hero phase and kind of catching up a little bit here. So the Necromancer did get Van Hells off on those skeletons, so they'll get that nice parrot ability that
Nice.
combos really well. The Vampire Lord also got Flaming Weapon off. Uh, Belladama casted Mystic Shield on the dogs that you see in the top middle right now. And then Manfred failed Amethestian Pinions, so he's not going to be zooming too far up the board, just his normal, pretty fast move.
Yeah, I think the Mortarks are all 16 inches to begin with, so
Yeah, 14 or 16, something just nuts flying across the
yeah,
board.
very quick. But looks like we are scoring and wrapping up the end of Soulblight turn, so no action. But it looks like a hold one, hold two, hold more, and battle tactic for ferocious advance.
And that's the nice thing I find about getting given first in the first turn a lot, is that you can get ferocious advance early on, which may be difficult to get later in the game when you have less units or your models all over the place or they're wrapped up in combat, so you don't have the opportunity to. And funny enough, that's actually one of the tactics, the only tactic Jordan dropped
Yeah,
in the tournament over the weekend, and that's because he just saw too good of an opportunity to win the game. But
I
um,
I
yeah, it's
did. Yeah, I'm excited. I actually want to do a Zach. That's like me and Zach ended up playing round 5 of this GT. I'm gonna get into it again in another stream, but I'm so excited to talk about it in the future. This is one of the best games of Warhammer I've been a part of. So
yeah,
that's not tonight though. Yeah.
yes, not tonight. Super fun, but
But yeah, so it's 5 point lead here for Soulblight after their turn. Obviously into Seraphon turn 1 now. CPs all over the place. Seraphon,
yeah,
generating a bunch of extra with their heroes, going up to 7 CP. That's, yeah, again, they're going to have a hard time spending all those, I think.
yeah, especially now in this bottom of the second turn. I think it would almost be impossible to utilize all of them. So, and if we want to get into their list, so we know
For sure, let's go. Want to take
who's
us through
doing
it?
what, yeah, sure. So starting off, we will have an Engine of the Gods, and they'll be the general. The trait will be Prime War Beast. The artifact will be Fusel of Conflagration, which is an amazing artifact. Lets you bear reroll, I believe, one. Oh no, sorry. I think of the next artifact, which is Ixie's Grubs, but this one lets you, in your shooting phase, pick an enemy unit and do some mortal wounds, the higher that you roll. But if you roll poorly for it, then you do not get to use it at all. Mount is Beastmaster, which allows it to have an extra attack, I believe, on its mount. And then the prayer is Curse, which is extremely useful spell, though pretty swingy, but those sixes on for mortals can be huge, and especially on a unit like the Engine of the Gods, which can get up close and put that prayer on and not really have to worry about dying, is extremely useful. And then we have a Slawn Starmaster, one of the better casters in the game with Ixie's Grubs this time. So this lets them reroll one casting or unbinding or dispelling roll, um, which is just insane on a Slawn that can already
Yep.
get a pretty decent casting buff. And then the spell Celestial Equilibrium. Then the Skink Priest, which I think is a mandatory addition to any Seraphon list, no matter what list you're running. Just the utility that you can get out of that priest, both because it almost has two prayers with its 3-up, +1 save, run, and shoot and charge. And then also gets to take its own prayer, which in this case is heal, which pairs nicely for these pretty tanky dinos.
Yep.
Then we have the Skink Star Priest, another awesome staple. That 6-up mortals for its ability on any unit, most likely the skinks in this case, to wound. Just incredibly helpful, been used against me about 1 billion times, and I
Oh,
can
yeah.
definitely attribute to its effectiveness, especially with all the +1s that those skinks can get, and they're rarely not on at least +1.
Yep.
And then another Skink Star Priest for a little bit of redundancy and Hand to Glory as well. And then to finish off with the troops of the list, we have a block of 30 skinks, which you can see right by that beautiful red temple there. We have another 10 skink screen, Steggy for 265, and then 2 Bastillodons with solar engines, which once again is a staple of a Thunder Lizard's list. The double tap that you can put on one of them is incredibly effective, especially because you can pair it with the hero phase +1 to hit that I mentioned before. So, and then finally the endless spell of Life Swarm. Once again, keeping those dinos alive and maybe bringing a few skink back if he needs to. And then the battalions are Hunters of the Heartlands, Command Entourage, Linebreaker, and the Grand Strat is Beastmaster, which is
Nice.
basically a no-brainer when it comes to
Yeah.
Seraphon Thunder Lizards.
Yeah, a lot of the big staples from the typical Seraphon's Thunder Lizard list we've seen. Obviously, as you alluded to, we are both very experienced in Seraphon, thanks to Ridge.
Yes.
Happy to abuse us with his dinos all the time. But makes for great practice too, so can't complain.
Yeah, yeah. And so it seems like the battle tactic that Seraphon went for was Conquer in that top right objective. Probably pretty secure, only 10 wolves on there. You just need to move 2 dinos on, and I'm sure with all the shooting paired with it, easily would be able to take that top right.
It looks like they're
So
just tagging it at the front of the unit too.
yeah, exactly. So unless he moves too close and there's a redeploy, there's no way those 10 dogs are getting on there. Then using the temple to its great effectiveness and targets the dogs, and it's just such a great ability to have as a terrain piece, being able to garrison, being able to target a terrain piece, and just start smoking mortal wounds on stuff. Looks like also Manfred took a mortal from Comet's Call, one of the better once again spells
Yep.
in the game, especially great for picking out small heroes, but also can be great chip damage on large heroes. But due to Soulblight's healing, might not be as effective,
True,
but
that's
definitely
true.
still a great utility spell, even just to start chipping away at bigger heroes. Because who knows, sometimes it's that one wound that makes a difference, right?
For sure. And a lot of chip damage coming out of the Seraphon, like you're saying, from the Realm Shaper, Comet's Call. There's even the Fusel Confederation. There's mortal wounds everywhere. So
Yeah.
a lot of chip damage though. So it'll be interesting to see, like you say, if Soulblight can weather it a little bit more than other armies. I know I actually played Eli round 1 of this tournament and had a great game with him. Absolute pleasure. And my Deepkin don't weather the mortal wounds as well as a death might. At least not the list I was taking there, but yeah, I'm interested to see how it goes.
Yeah, yeah. It's I find it's always a tough match against Seraphon. Really, no matter the list in most cases, they just have so much power across the board. And as mentioned before, you can see the Stegodon moving smartly outside of 9, looking to say, "Hey, you only have a tow of maybe 1 or 2 dogs on there. I'm going to put my 5 model
Yep.
Stegi on it and take it over without really risking it at all."
Yep. Not letting him
Um,
redeploy any more guys onto the objective. Smart.
exactly. I always argue that's the biggest game winner is redeploy, or game loser if you're on the other side of it. So it's just such an effective tool to have.
Definitely.
Uh, yeah, but wrapping up the hero phase, we have the Bastiladon who got Mystic Shield on it from the Slan, so it's going to be extra tanky on a 0-up save right now, which
Nice.
is absolutely nuts. I'm going to need mortals to start chipping away at that guy. Stone Staff fails though on one of the other Basties, um, and Bless is cast on the Skinks. Then we have Hand of Glory on one of the other Bastiladons. So once again, just a
Yep.
pretty amazing one. It's Bastiladons are pretty effective with their shooting. Then also getting a potential few more mortals out of it as well can be great.
And the Hand of Glory spell is actually the reroll once to hit. Another
Oh, sorry,
amazing
reroll
spell.
ones to hit. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But I mean, combination of that, right? Like we said, there's the potential command ability hero +1 to hit, a reroll ones to hit. So he normally hits on 4s, I think, base. So but becomes 3s rerolling 1s is pretty solid.
Yeah, so
And
you're
yeah,
really only missing 1 or 2 of those shots max, and then you'll have at least maybe a couple mortals coming through in addition to some of that Rend 1, 2 damage, and which can be double tapped, which super effective and efficient.
yeah, and that's usually again when you throw all the buffs on that one Basiladon, that's probably the one we're going to see getting double tapped or you would think you want to double tap that one while he's all, again, utilizing all the buffs. It's scary. It's spicy. I remember back in AOS 2 when, you could run 3 Bastiladons and double tap all of them.
Yeah. And as we were discussing before, Seraphon had the CP for it, right? It was really never an issue, and they would actually end up using all of it, which is the most terrifying part, is that they would actually be able to use all that CP, so.
Yep, nice. It looks like the Skinks are pushing here up towards that top right objective as well. I guess not any, again, with no real reason to go towards the center of the board. That's the closest threat to them, so trying to get their shots in where they can, I guess.
Yeah, and it sets them up in a nice position. They're by a bunch of Stegodons, so if they do decide to send the zombie dragon over there, or Manfred even, they're going to get shot pretty hard and then sent into combat. And Stegodons, even though not as tanky as a Bastiladon, against one model units, they do get +1 to save, and then that combined with maybe a Mystic Shield or an all-out defense makes them pretty hard to remove. And then the additional 2 wounds that Thunder Lizards gives, you can be wrapped up in one if you aren't getting the damage that you expect. So
definitely. Oh, so what do you think the biggest threats here? What do you think, like, for shooting wise for Seraphon? Obviously, the Skinks don't have the longest range, but our Bastiladons down in the bottom, I guess they're not gonna have a lot of options either. But what do you think they're gonna go for? It's Graveguard are obviously a scary one.
Yeah, I think you target the Graveguard. They're one of the few that can take out a Bastiladon or a Stegodon in a single combat just due to their pure damage. They've thrown a lot of dice at you, and they also have mortal wounds as well. So they can take out a Dino a turn if they need to. But once again, the issue is there's just so much that they can bring back and so much that they can heal that sometimes the chip damage isn't enough. So I feel like the Seraphon player here will really need to focus down whatever they do choose to target.
Yeah.
At least 1 at a time, or maybe 2 at a time if they are in a good position.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like there's going to be, again, many options here. Soulblight didn't, rush up the board too close, but
no.
It's always like, again, the challenge for something like those Graveguard is they're to have a tough time closing as well, right? They're not the speediest. Even the skeletons, they don't have the same, pile in tricks as the zombies, so different challenges there. And
yeah, it's interesting. It seems like he did put his slower stuff on the left with the skeletons and Graveguard, and then he does have his faster stuff more in the centralized and up on the top right there. Obviously, with the pure speed, they can kind of get wherever they want, but moving those skeletons and Graveguard to any other point in the field for the rest of the game will be a bit of a slog.
Yeah, and I think, sorry, completely mind farted there. We are into shooting phase though now, it looks like. Starting off with the engine here. Rolling, it sounds like a 7. I don't know if
7, which I believe is a heal.
Okay, so not very relevant there.
No.
So it looks like the engine wasn't very effective. But I do want to give a quick shout out to Bottler, good buddy of ours in the chat. George, he's in there. I've recognized him just from his user icon, even though his handle wasn't there. But he's running the Montreal Grant GT, I believe, in the coming months. So if you're in Quebec or Ontario or even northeastern US, definitely check it out if you're looking for a GT. Montreal GT, hit it up. All right, I'm curious to see what's getting targeted here.
Yeah, I think we have some Skinks shooting right now. And
again, probably looks like they're probably going at those dogs then at the top right.
Yeah, that's their closest target. And they wouldn't have, obviously, the full unit going in there. I believe their bolas only have their pipes only have 16-inch range. So it'll just be a few, but still manage to kill a couple dogs. Dogs don't have the highest save, but they are surprisingly tanky at 2 wounds. It's easy to underestimate how many wounds is actually there. It's almost like a bone splitters effect when you just look at a couple bores and you think, oh, that's not too many wounds, and then it surprises you. So
for sure,
they can be hard to remove.
Yeah, for sure, and especially even like the swinginess of having a ward save, right?
Yeah.
whenever you have a 6-up, it can always roll a couple extra 6s and something will stick around longer than you expect it to.
I always say, 6-up ward is infinitely better than no ward at all. That like it just takes one spike to completely change what you would expect a unit to take, or if you expect a unit to hold a point. So it can be huge. Yeah, then we have those skinks in the bottom left there, just plinking up a couple shots. It seems like they did about 1 damage to a skeleton, which I'm sure they'll have no
Nice.
problem getting back
Yeah.
their poor bony friends that bit the dust.
Yeah, the skinks are pretty brave engaging those skeletons.
Yeah.
They're danger close there, and I don't think they're going to have much chance of taking that objective.
No.
Adam in the chat is asking if the Graveguard are running Great Blades. I would assume, as you do, Adam, that they are.
Yeah, that is the best kit out for them. Yeah, it'd be very surprising if they weren't.
But we will give him the benefit of the doubt and make that assumption. The list is up on BCP if you want to go look a little deeper. We don't have quite all the notes. I don't know. That's usually is mentioned on lists, but we don't have that information at hand. So it looks like we got some more damage coming into the skeletons with that buffed up Bastiladon killing 8 more. So 4
Which
shots.
Is actually a little bit less than I thought would go through to the skeletons there.
Yeah, because Rend 1 is all you need in skeletons. I don't even know if they have a base save.
Yeah, I think they're shielded makes them a 5-up and then they're base 6.
Okay.
Or they might be a base 5-up with the shield 4. Once again, I don't really see them too often. They usually zombies overshadow them.
Okay, so yeah, I'm thinking of the zombies then. They do have a little bit better armor than the zombies then, so that is one advantage.
Yeah.
So, and there's George. Huge shout out to Bodler for joining the premium team. Thank you so much for the channel support. And you did instant access, as I always say, to like at least 40 other AOS 3 battle reports at this point. So definitely got a backlog of content to catch up on there.
Yeah, it only grows, right? Only more and more.
And it looks like the Bastiladon with his has been double tapped, and his second activation is going at those Graveguard who use all out defense, and 5 get taken down though, so not a crazy amount, but not nothing either. Again, like you said, they want to try and focus down the Soulblight units rather than chipping them down because of the potential recursion. But
yeah. The Graveguard are obviously one of the bigger hammer units that they have. Maybe one of the only ones that can actually take out the Basti effectively, just because how high their save is. So it's just with the weight of dice, because the other guys, it's just like all it takes is a few saves, right? And if you're at that high of a save for the Bastiladon, then those few attacks from Manfred or the Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon can just whiff.
Yes, yeah, it's so sketchy. Even like, I've seen it with the turtle when you're on Rend 3 and something like a Kragnos, as we've talked about, Zach, or we've seen, when Rend 3 on a Kragnos who's at +2 to save, you're still on like, a 2-up, 3-up, like it's very tough to crack through that, unless your opponent rolls extremely poorly. But on averages.
On averages, yeah, you can hang around pretty well. And once again, with the Stegodon, with both Stegodons and the other Bastiladon, it's a bunch of redundancy with the tankiness. And going in, so Seraphon finish up their turn, they'll score hold 1, hold 2, and their tactic for 4. And it seems like for the priority roll here, that Soulblight wins.
Nice, yeah, I just saw that rolled there, so... what do you think? Do you think take it or give it away?
I think they're in a strong position to give it away and hope for the double. Their big pieces are still far away. I feel like they'll have a hard time taking that bottom left objective still, just because all the skeletons they're on it, and if they try to get too close, they could potentially get a redeploy and also put a lot more of their stuff in danger, right? So it looks like Soulblight did give it away, so I think that is the right call.
As you predicted.
Yes. I just once you're in like a solid hiding position like that and a little bit more defensive. And that's why I kind of like these missions like Tooth and Nail, ones where you do have a home objective, so you're not
Mhm.
necessarily forced into the center. And that's coming from a destruction player, so you can kind of see the value that that may have instead of just charging in head first. So
Yes,
it's uh
this is
it's valuable.
a very Zach tactic or play to have a very reserved turn one, bring your enemy close, and then unleash afterwards. So yeah,
Got to make those charges,
yeah,
right? So
yeah, I've seen you do it. You've done it to me more than once, so I definitely know how effective that can be. But Soulblight again here, they have no shooting, right? So they do want the Seraphon, army to come closer to some degree, so they can get in. And right now, yeah, the big two heroes, especially that Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon, he's fast, but he's not getting corner to corner on this table.
yeah, that is true, and they still have MFS and Pinions in their back pocket, which is just an amazing spell. Moving 20 to 22 inches, just absolutely zooming across the table, pairing that with a charge, extremely effective if this Seraphon player wants to push up onto these objectives more and get better capture power on it instead of just tipping toes. They'll have to risk getting both Manfred and the Zombie Dragon into combat range.
Yep, yep. And well, they want to get into combat. I mean, Seraphon, I think, are almost happy to sit back and just shoot stuff down if they can. Like you said earlier, they do want to focus stuff down, which is the challenge right now, where they're not able to really leverage all their shooting into the juicy targets that they want to. But it's going to be, interesting to see if they can take out any of the Soulblight units. Obviously, seeing another double tap, 2 activations of the Bastildon into those Graveguard or something could be pretty painful. We might see those dogs go down to the Stegodons and Skinks at the top right.
Yeah. It's once again, those dogs are surprisingly tanky. Like, I'm not even sure if those ones in the top right, due to their bravery as well, I'm not sure if they'll even disappear. And then you still have that huge bunch in the middle, just have such strong capture power, and you can throw them in, and they might not even die into whatever you throw them into. And at 135 for a unit like that, it's pretty solid to have in your back pocket. So
Yeah.
definitely solid list building in that regard.
Yeah. And so for the Seraphon turn, it looks like Eli has gone for Monstrous Takeover with the Engine of the Gods. So easy objective for him to score here, automatic, as long as he just goes onto one of the objectives that he controls. Good staple one. It's kind of one of the reasons why you almost, this GHB this year, you really are encouraged to bring monsters, right? And the biggest reason for me is that battle tactic almost.
Oh, it's almost a guarantee. And actually, on that point, do you think that's the right call here? Or do you think, because that's such an easy one that you can get late game, especially when you have 4 monsters, that it might be worth going, not for a necessarily more difficult one, but one that is at least a little bit more achievable that might not be achievable later in the game?
What are you thinking? Broken Ranks
I'm
is
thinking maybe a broken ranks on the top dogs. I mean, it might not be part of his plan. Obviously, it's hard to be inside the player's head, but I feel like with the Skinks and the Steggy potentially charging in to those unit of dogs, it almost would guarantee the tactic. And if you can finish it off with a monster at that point, it's just more points for him. And
that's true.
there's not too much Soulblight can do, especially because they didn't take the turn and weren't able to get any resurrections or healings off. So
yeah, and like you said, you think with having 4 monsters that Seraphon could store that later in the game, but maybe just trying to grab the easy ones now and take the points where he can without much risk is you never know. As soon as Manfred and the Zombie Dragon go in, even if Eli holds the objective over them, there can't be another monster contesting it for Monstrous Takeover.
exactly, and they're pretty tanky. They don't necessarily have at least they don't have the the super high survivability that some other monsters have, like Stonehorns that are 3 up and 5 up ward.
Yep.
But they do have the healing that comes in, and that sustainability is huge. And so they can really stay on a point, and they can hold you off from monstrous takeover.
Yep. And Manfred dancing around as well is always a consideration too, of Now he's not in combat right now, so that's not a threat. But if he is in the future, and he can teleport and touch the back of an objective at some point, that would there's some spicy tricks that you can do with Manfred at times.
Yeah, and right now we're seeing a lot more chip damage coming in. So we have some Realm Shaper does a damage to the dogs in the middle there, and also puts on a wound to Belladama. And then we also have Comet's Call coming in, which was casted at least a 10, gets to target D6 units, and it targets the big 5. And
Nice.
so Graveguard took 2. The dogs on the top you saw there, now down to only 3, have also taken 2. Belladama took 1, the skeletons took 1, and then the middle dogs took another 1 mortal wound.
Wow.
Um, so
Yeah,
yeah,
with that
it's
chip
awesome
damage.
damage.
Yep. Yep. And yeah, I think again with that Bastildon, I think we're to see those Graveguard potentially getting punished this turn. So might cripple that unit to some degree with Marcus giving away the turn here. But it's a tough mission for the Graveguard because they really want a deep strike, right? And and here with Tooth and Nail, there was no deep striking on this mission, so it was definitely a tough one for those slow foot slaughtered skeletons.
Yeah, as Adam mentioned in the chat, Tooth and Nail is a tough one for Soulblight,
Yep.
just because of just no being able to deep strike, and this isn't Fangs of Sotek or Draconis Tail, which punishes summoning and bringing down units. So Thunder Lizards are basically unimpacted by that certain aspect of the mission. So there is a certain disadvantage to Soulblight, unfortunately.
Yep.
For them.
Definitely. But yeah, Seraphon, as you said, don't care here. There's slow foot slogged in anyways, so brings everyone to their level.
Yeah, I still think it was the right call, giving away the turn. Graveguard weren't getting into anything anyways. Those skeletons might have gone to those skinks, but to get a decent charge, there would have been a redeploy involved potentially, and so they wouldn't, I don't think, accomplish too much if they took the turn, and now they have the potential double with a double heal on a lot of their units, and also getting those big boys into some of the other units as well, which is what I love. I love getting my destruction double, and I'm sure
Oh
when you have
yeah.
big monsters, no matter what faction you have, that double can be very, very impactful.
And I think a smart play for Marcus too, just like trying to put himself, he's on the back foot with this mission from the start, trying to put himself in the best position he can to kind of set up for, hopefully a big play to kind of, level the playing field and taking advantage, in that mid to early game. If he can get that double, which would be big. So yeah, it'll be exciting to see what happens. We obviously saw a bunch of buffs of various forms coming out of the Seraphon command abilities,
the
stabs,
hero.
and spells. Yeah, so looks like that.
We got Mystic Shield on the engine, and then Stone Staff, Herald of the Old Ones, and Serpent Staff, all in the Bastillodon that was near the engine.
Yeah,
and then Hand of Glory also on that Bastillodon.
Yeah.
So that guy is juiced to the nines with all of those hot Seraphon buffs.
Yeah, you can see that. Yeah, that Bastillodon with all those tokens over there. Great to keep track of all that stuff.
Yes.
Love the use of tokens, always important. Both the players, we can see the the gravesite tokens on the board as well, and always love that kind of bookkeeping. Just making sure it's all visible. You can tell what's what and where the buffs are is a great way to play Warhammer.
Yeah, it's something I should definitely utilize more in my games. I play Destruction, so there's really not too many buffs going on.
Yeah.
It's more just like 1 or 2 here, but it's also more so valuable for your opponent so they know what's going on. Because even though you may remember that unit has Finest Hour, your opponent might not remember that you said it, and it's great to have that indication there, and it's great for everyone who's at the table.
Yeah, clarification too, making sure you don't forget or no one makes mistakes or anything. So.
Exactly.
Clarity is always the best way. But I'm curious now that I assume that Bastillodon was the one who got buffed because the other one was probably too far up.
Yeah,
but
that is one thing that I especially notice Ridge playing is those Seraphon's buff ranges tend to be a little bit more generous. You still have to stay within those buff ranges.
Yeah.
And with keeping your heroes outside of that danger zone, you got to make sure that the pieces that you want to keep within stay within.
Yep. And I wonder though if that super buffed Basti, which And I not realizing he was outside of his ranges potentially with the front one. I wonder if that back one will be in range of the Graveguard, which I thought would probably be his target. Um,
Yeah, that's a
but
very good point.
24 inches is pretty far, but hard to tell, always from the top down if that's going to be in range.
I think it will be pretty close if it
Yeah.
is. And then maybe the Soulblight Gravelord player might be hoping they took out those uh, 3 Graveguard that were closer to Bastildon instead
Yeah,
of the far ones,
that's true.
as those couple of inches might make the difference here.
That's very true. Always a heads up play, thinking of things like that, of like, lengthening shooting ranges, lengthening charges. Those little things are often, can make or break games, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Subtle
It's a
redeploys,
failed charge could destroy your entire game plan, right?
for sure.
Once again, as a destruction player who actually has 0 shooting armies at all, charges make or break my game. So it's always something that I watch out for, and I'll even elect not to shoot. Or if in the case where I do mortal wounds on the charge, I'll make sure I'm trying to charge a different unit or allocating those wounds to a different unit if I can, just to not hurt the charge from maybe another unit nearby. So
Yeah,
always something you gotta consider.
makes sense. Makes sense. But looks like those brave skinks we talked about last turn are just screening off the Bastiladon a little bit, trying to toe onto the objective. So maybe he'll go for the skeletons just to clear off that objective and tag it. He is down a point, so he has to start making up points somewhere, get that hold 2 and hold more, which he missed the hold more on his turn 1. So again, gotta start catching up. It's only 1 round, but if he doesn't flip it here, it'll be 2 rounds potentially that he'll be behind on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. With a double turn, you can never count yourself out, but it is a back foot, unfortunately, from them from the beginning.
Yep.
And
And
we looks like we have the Engine of the Gods rolling at 10, which is the mortal wound, and it picked the doggo unit just right in front there and did about 1 damage.
okay, so 3 dogs left, 5 wounds left in that unit, so probably not gonna last too long as that. I think you're right that a broken wrench there would have been a good option.
Yeah, getting a nice one with a monster early on, right? Then that one's in your books. You still have Ferocious. You still have Monstrous Takeover.
Yeah,
2 pretty solid ones.
yeah, yeah. It's unfortunately for the Stinks though. Like they'd almost not want to shoot at that rate because you don't want to accidentally kill them with the Stinks, which very easily could. But I don't think the Stinks, like, again, we've seen most of the buffs go on the Bastiladon because the Stinks probably Eli realizes there's not many effective targets for them right now. So better utilized elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a good play. But unbuffed Skinks, for as scary as they can be in general, usually when people think of Skink's output, they think of all the damage, Hand of Glory, +1 to hit, mortal wounds on 6s from the staff. But on a unit of unbuffed Skink, almost does effectively no damage in most cases, just
Yes.
a couple plank wounds here and there. I always love being able to charge into a unit of unbuffed Skinks. So, but I'm sure he has his buff pieces nearby when he needs them.
Yeah.
But now it opens up those Skinks as a prime target for either Manfred or the Zombie Dragon to get into.
Yeah, great,
Because they
great
can be
time.
zooming across the board.
Yeah, without buffs, you're not really worried about Unleash Hell with their solid armor saves, so it's a great shout. You could definitely be a target right now while they're not too buffed up. Looks like the Fusel Confederation from the engine did finish off that one dog we saw get wounded, so not too much, only 4 wounds left there for the dogs, and it sounds like the Skinks right now are shooting into those dogs, so we'll probably see. Yeah, it'll be interesting. I would laugh if the Skinks don't take them down again. Without all those buffs, they're not going to be doing too much, but the dogs also don't have much armor.
Yeah, they don't, but once again, like 2 wounds apiece on those guys. So, like hang around for two turns of Seraphon shooting, even though it's not the entire army shooting into them, just hanging out there, is pretty solid and like soaking up that damage. And once again, they're 135 points. So he put a lot of his own army points into killing those dogs. And
Yeah,
That's, I mean, in my opinion, a pretty solid trade because that's not going to Manfred, not going into the Zombie Dragon, not going to Belladonna, not going into the Graveguard. So, and he has another pack of 10 just sitting there right in the middle that can just run over at any time. So,
Yep, and there goes those two dogs. So they do die to the Stinks, and obviously, Seraphon take that objective. They already held it, but kind of cleared that flank off. This is like going to be a big turn here. I'm really excited to see what the Basildons do. We're not going to see much in the way of combat at all, I don't think. I'm sure those 10 Stinks aren't going to be so brave to try and charge the skeletons or anything, but it'll definitely be interesting to see how Marcus answers. Whether, because his two big pieces, they are fast, but they're also not too close to anything, right? I don't know, do you send them like across, diagonally to try and pressure the home objective on a double? Or do you think pushing them to that top right objective to take on the engine and the Stegadon?
yeah, yeah. Well, once again, I think I'd go, I'd maybe send Manfred into the Stegadon, the solar or the engine of the gods, and tie him up. And then at any point in combat, if he feels that he's scared or needs to pull back, he immediately can send those dogs over there as well. And then the zombie dragon, send them into those skinks before they can get their buffs off. Wipe the unit before they're even effective, because those skinks are basically the scariest unit on the board buffed up. So if that were me, that'd be the first thing I would take out.
Yep, makes sense. And we've seen the Stegadon shoot into Belladama, but with those wolves there, she passed those wounds off to the wolves, taking 3 damage. So 1 wolf was taken down, and I think the Skinks just shot into the skeletons. Those 10 at the bottom, dealing no damage. So again, about what we were expecting from buffed up Skinks, not too much.
Yeah,
or from non-buff Skinks, sorry.
Yeah. Over 2 shooting phases, 1 damage to skeletons.
Yeah.
That's about as much as you expect of 10 skinks, but their board presence and screening presence pays for them enough for sure.
Bodler is asking, and if you're joining late, you don't know, tonight I'm joined by Zach Aarons. Zach, one of the members of Season of War, you've definitely seen on the channel. If you're a premium member, you saw him on this past Friday. I'm not going to spoil the game, actually, but we faced off in a big destruction matchup. So if you haven't seen that yet, go check it out. Big, epic, Beast Claw Raiders with Kragnos facing off against 2 Mod Crushers in the Iron Jaws. So, Zach, I'm happy to have you again. Your first time here commentating tonight, and it's been a blast so far, but we're just still, it feels like, getting into the action.
Yeah, there's really been no combat, and once again, as a man of a pure combat armies, this is a little odd for me to only see shooting so far. So,
Yep.
Hopefully we'll be able to get into the itty-gritty fighting soon.
Yep, you love your Ogres, you love your Iron Jaws.
Yep. Fire Slayers, Slaves
Yep.
to Darkness. It's all melee over here. Hopefully it'd expand into shooting, build up at least that play style a little bit more, get a little bit more well-rounded, but...
Sure, I know we were talking, a lot of people want to see your Fire Slayers out on the channel again soon, so we'll have to plan something in the near future. I know we were talking about it already, but yeah. Be eager to see with the new book. I didn't get another look at the Fire Slayers. I haven't played against them with the new tome yet. I don't know if you've seen much of them.
Yeah, I played a couple of games with them so far, wrote a few lists. In the beginning, it was hard for me to write one that I really liked. Especially coming from 2nd edition with them being able to chuck 60 Hearthguard on the table. So it'll be fun to get them on the channel. But yes, the next time I make an appearance, they will be there. So
look forward to
Slayer
it.
Fans out there, you'll see them.
We have seen, so the front Bastildon was in range of those Graveguard at least. So he has taken out 6 more, which again is pretty big. I'm going to assume that the Bastildon in the back was not in range of the Graveguard, as it sounds like it's shooting into the just normal skeletons right now.
Yeah.
And we'll see how much. I think we were just rolling some armor saves and ward saves, and
it's like about 14 damage there.
Coming through. Okay, wow. So That's a ton of damage to those skeletons. Obviously, a ton of those guys are gone, crippling that unit too. But I am almost like if I had the choice, I'd rather see the Graveguard gone. So I don't know if they were out of range or he's just trying to, cripple both units.
Yeah, I think you had a good eye there in the beginning, Jord. I think if he could have shot the Graveguard with the buffed one, he would. So just had to go into the skeletons there. And once again, I think pulling here was huge. I think maybe pulling from the back would have been the more apt choice here, just so you were closer to those skeletons, because, closer to the skinks, because you only have a 4-inch move, and I assume you want those skeletons to be regenerating as soon as possible, because they're most effective in combat and not just getting plinked off the board. So if you can get them brought back with those 4-ups in combat, that's huge, especially if Van Hells can get in range.
For sure. And yeah, skinks are an easy target to go into right in combat. You're not too scared of losing the rest of your unit, but
looks like he had the foresight anyway.
Yeah.
Because with that double tap was able to remove all of the skeletons.
Yeah, not going to have a chance to recur any skeletons there. They've all gone down, and Eli, as intended, just making sure those skeletons or the skinks didn't get bumped or anything, towing onto that objective, so he can get that hold more that he missed last turn.
Yeah. It's Soulblight in a tough spot, but in terms of points removed, not very much actually. Skeletons, obviously, a block of 30 isn't necessarily cheap, but it's cheaper than most other heavy blocks of things that you'd expect, and only losing a pack of dogs so far. Those Graveguards have taken a hit, but he still has 2 big monsters with Manfred and the Vampire Lord, and also still has Belladama, which is not only a great caster, but a great utility piece in general, and can do some damage in a fight.
Yep. For sure, they definitely can. And especially with the potential of the double, you never can't count it out yet, right? With big monsters like that, if they can take out Dan, I think it's going to be big if they can get into combat this turn with their charges. That's going to be a big question mark, I think. Hopefully, we can see opinions go off or 2 to help out with that. Giving some extra movement there for the Soulblight, but yeah, I think that's pretty much where we are.
And actually, looking at it now, like you said, the fish lens does kind of distort it a little bit, but those skinks are kind of close to that Bastiladon down low, so my plan of going into the skinks may backfire, because due to the large size of the Vampire Lord base, going into them could get them shot by that buffed Bastiladons.
That's very true. Very buffed, so in Unleash Hell, it's still rerolling 1s +1 to hit, so yeah, that could be spicy. It's not a lot of options there for Marcus, it doesn't feel like.
Yeah, it's tough. Having the wolf still is great. He still has that fast piece that can move around and is relatively tanky, but he's basically lost a hammer and 2 solid objective cappers. So,
yep. So, bit of a tough spot here. It sounds like info from our table boss that Seraphon. So Eli's scoring 4 points here. So I'm not sure if he missed. The hold, I'm not sure if his skinks weren't on the objective, or maybe, I'm not sure what's up.
Yeah, I saw he was measuring 9 for them to keep out of the range of the skeletons, but I'd be surprised if at least 1 wasn't tipping their toe, but hey, that could easily be 6 inches from that closest skink, so maybe he was just out, and that might have been what they were measuring before to see.
Yeah, so maybe he didn't even think he would take out the skeletons to take the objective, so he didn't even try to tag it, but sounds like it'll just be 4 points here for Seraphon, and we'll be going into Soulblight Gravelords turn 2.
Yeah. So, what tactic do you think would be the best one to go for here, seeing as how it's in a little bit of a difficult position?
Oh gosh, that's a tough one. We saw Ferocious Advance turn 1 from Soulblight. They already hold 1. If they're going to push that top right objective, maybe an aggressive expansion. This is like the best time to do it before one of those middle objectives gets burned. And while they still hold the bottom left one. So
Exactly.
if they're gonna push those two monsters to that top right, I maybe, but there's still two monsters on the Seraphon side and all those Skinks, so that's gonna be a tough one to do. I don't know. Do you have any other ideas?
Yeah, I would think aggressive maybe if since it's your last chance, but you brought up a really good point. It maybe be hard to take it. It looks like they have at least 10 on there with the two Stegodons and then maybe another 4 to 10 Skinks. So that might be pretty difficult, but you would hope that they'd be able to wipe it, but never a guarantee. But it looks like here they chose bring it down on the Stegodon, which I
Okay.
believe is the Engine of the God Stegodon, which is
Okay.
a great choice. Gets rid of their general, gets rid of a CP that they don't need. But Engine of the God has such insane utility with getting Saurus summoned as well, potentially, which I think happens to me at least 2 to 3 times each time I play Thunder Lizards. I get Saurus, those 10 Saurus coming in.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
avoiding that later game, especially because you lost a lot of your capping power, I think is the play.
Yep. And I think the bring down is a big one. It's a bit of a gamble still. You got to get in there, got to make your charges. Hope he doesn't get a big redeploy. But probably less risk to just kill that one Stegodon than also have to worry about getting more bodies on the objective. So I think smart play there, smarter than my idea, which is why I am not a Soulblight player. I mean, it's battle tactics, but these players are obviously heads in the game right now.
Yeah, actually, Adam brought up a good point in the chat. Monstrous takeover. You would be sacrificing a monster to go down to that bottom left objective to secure it, but that would be a guaranteed tactic going down there. And if the scoring is, well, actually, you attended this tournament, didn't you, George?
Yep.
So what was the scoring like? Was it typical like it is here in Ontario? Was it battle points focused?
It was just straight victory points after wins as the first tiebreaker. Okay. So every victory
tactics aren't as pivotal, but they still get you those extra points.
Exactly. So it's still 2 VP. You do want to make sure you get them where you can. It's not that kind of a play. You really like if you kill the chaff, kill the stinks while you're down there, you clear a screen. But if you do not get that double turn, you are a sitting duck with those two Bastiladons facing you down right there.
Yeah, you're right in the danger zone.
Yeah.
So it also looks like here that both the Engine and Manfred went for heroic leadership and both got that CP.
Cool.
Belladonna cast Killing Moon and then also cast Mystic Shield on herself. Manfred cast Pinions, which once again, great movement spell, but that was unfortunately for the Soulblight Gravelord player, unbound, so losing out on that movement there.
Yep, that board wide unbind is always big for Seraphon. Those slams.
It's not to be underestimated how powerful just that one line in that rule is to be able to say, it doesn't matter if you're 40 inches away from me, I can unbind that at a +1 or +2.
Yep. Yeah, it looks like we've seen also the Necromancer cast Invigorating Aura, bringing back 3 more Graveguards, so slowly trying to replenish that unit, but
yeah, I mean, like even over the couple turns, if he gets the double, maybe another 3 could be huge here, right? You would have to push up the Necromancer into a little bit of danger close territory without the skeletons nearby to pass those wounds off. It could be dangerous, but I think keeping those Graveguard up if you can is pretty vital and basically the Necromancer's main job. And Decrepify is also extremely valuable, so if he's able to get him in range maybe of one of those Bastiladons, or any units actually, it would be pretty huge.
Yeah, and it just looks like Manfred just barely tagged within 3 of that Engine of the Gods, who redeploys and rolled, it looks like from here, a big 6.
Oh, shoot.
So that's where you almost, if you're not going to get in with like 5 or 6 inches, sometimes you just are better off staying outside of 9 to avoid that big redeploy. Because even if it's going to be a 7 or an 8-inch charge anyways, you're at least giving them an inch with a redeploy, right? Or losing an inch with a redeploy. So
yeah, the only time I would maybe get that close, if it is that close, if it's not super vital, or if your opponent doesn't have enough CP.
Yeah.
and would need it maybe for an all-out defense or need it for an inspiring presence. But in this case, just because Seraphon have so much, a redeploy here and there is nothing.
Yeah, yeah, that's gonna be a tough one there. Now, even with I don't think there's any way the zombie dragon's gonna be fast enough to get over there either. So sounds like that is, or looks like that's gonna be a failed battle tactic here for Soulblight this turn, which is gonna hurt.
It's rough.
Good point. By Adam in the chat again. With Manfred actually doing a monstrous takeover, you could whip Manfred in, get him in. You know, if you wanted some combat out of him. Now, doesn't look like he's gonna get the opportunity here. And then teleport back to your home objective for monstrous takeover is an option as well to be a little safer if he had have gone down towards the Skinks or something in the bottom. But yeah, just with how far the Seraphon army was sitting back and then that big redeploy. Oh, we're gonna hope for some big charges here, especially that zombie dragon might have a chance to get into those Skinks actually. So
yeah, and yeah, that wouldn't be that hard of a charge, and can always do a cheeky pile in as well, right? And
still try and get that battle tactic.
Yeah, and that's pretty important. But I know Vampire Lords on Zombie Dragons can do a bunch of damage, but will it be enough to take out that Stegodon? I think maybe one of the key things that Elijah should have done is maybe put Finest Hour as soon as he heard that Stegodon could have been under threat, because now it's just on a 4-up save. It will be on a 3-up as soon as it gets into combat by pointing at Shield Crest, but still a 3-up, and Zombie Dragons hit pretty hard, so it could definitely do it.
All defense is an option too, so but still
Wars...
exactly. The Roar is always a threat, so like you said, the Finest Hour is a guaranteed +1.
Yeah. At least when I'm doing my calculations for it, because a lot of my damage is from combat, I always count on a Roar coming in. So I almost count that I will almost never get an all-out defense if I'm going up against another monster, just to be on the safe side. And then if I do, then I'm a happy man.
Looks like we just saw 2 dice rolled. Charge for the Graveguard, only rolling a 5. Looks like it's gonna be close here, so they're measuring it very.
Yeah, measuring half an inch to see if that 5 inches does get him there. Looking pretty close.
Yes, it is.
I mean, that's a huge charge. That's not one that you'd want to fail, right? When you have another important charge up top. So you have to think which one you would want to re-roll if this one fails, right?
Yes.
Because this one's the more guaranteed one, but the zombie dragon getting in is just so important.
Pretty cool, right? Yeah, that's almost you almost want to start with the most important one first so you can spend your reroll then if you need to. If not, you can save it for a less important charge like you said, but
well, yep. Seems like they're going to make it in because of their 6-inch charge rule, which is incredibly valuable. Something that you would think would be on a destruction army, but is instead on a bunch of dead boys. But it's going to save the day here and prevent having to complete a reroll at all. Saving that CP for the big charge up in the top right, which, once again, as you pointed out, George, going into the Skinks first, maybe only be an 8-inch, 9-inch charge.
But Snake Eyes on that charge is not what he needed. But picking up those dice again, looks like we're gonna see a reroll. Ooh, I think that's gotta be a 6. It looks like a symbol, so.
Yeah, that looks like a symbol and a 5.
Looks like this is for Manfred's charge, though.
Oh, okay. Oh, was it not enough?
Don't tell me. Okay, maybe that wasn't a reroll then. That could have been the zombie dragon.
Oh, okay.
Ooh.
Oh no. Interesting choice.
So perhaps we saw those charges in the wrong order where the zombie dragon rolled those Snake Eyes. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe he ran. Maybe he was so far back that he decided to run the zombie dragon. Not 100% sure on that one, but Manfred, it looks like
bear provision next turn.
Yeah, just out. Yeah, that's true too. Could have actually just ran to set up for the hopeful double. But Manfred needed a 12 there, rolled an
Yep.
11. So isn't
So
getting in there.
close. So close. And it's so painful when you measure before too. You're like, yeah, that's about a 12, and you roll an 11. You're like, but was it really a 12? And then you go back, you're like, yeah, it was a 12.
Yeah, yeah. It's like you're always hopeful to try, but looks like the Graveguard here will be going into the Skinks. The only combat we're going to see, the first combat of the round in the fourth turn, or first combat of the game in the fourth turn of the game is not what Soulblight wants, right? They want to get in there. Not necessarily super fast, but here they're just getting shot down turn by turn as we've seen so far.
Yeah, it's basically just been damage only on one side, which is unfortunate for the Soulblight player. This is a tough match for them on this battle plan.
Yeah, I think the priority is probably going to be what Marcus is hoping for here going into round 3. Does mean one of the objectives will be burned, but that's not necessarily the worst thing for Marcus, because where Eli's power is where his power is also right now. And yeah, you almost think Eli might choose not to burn one, or burn the top one, the top right one that he's drawing, coming down towards, so that it's almost pointless to fight on that one where Marcus is setting up to fight.
Yeah, and it's just like, hey, you came all the way here with your entire force. The wolves are there, Belladamma's there, Manfred's there. The only thing that isn't there is the few Graveguard that are left.
Yeah.
So that would be a good burn. It's almost a lose-lose situation in that regard.
Yeah. But then again, yeah, that's tough, because on that priority though, if Soulblight do win it, all that stuff's just going to come straight down into those Basildons. And if they can fight there, they cut off pretty much the closest things for Seraphon to pressure that left objective too. So no great options here, I don't think. But
and we saw there in the bottom left, those Graveguard only doing 4 damage to the Skinks. Obviously, the -1 damage helping there, but you would really think more on Skinks, who at best have a 5-up save.
Yeah, not very great. But with the Soulblight Allegiance abilities, they are able to return one of their summonable units at half strength. So we're seeing that unit of dogs that died round 2, to the Seraphon last turn being returned here, rolling that 5-up and getting 5 more bodies. Not too crazy, but every little bit helps for Soulblight, right? They'll take what they can get.
Yeah, and maybe even sending them into that 30 block of Skinks if you're going to send Manfred and the Zombie Dragon into the Steggies. Oh, priority roll here, though.
Yep. A 1 for Eli, yep. And a 6 for Marcus, looks like. So I think, Soulblight are going to win it here. And taking the turn, so that is big for Marcus. What do you think, Zach? What do you think Eli's going to burn, or will he burn an objective?
I think if I was him, I would burn that top right. Just because those Bastildons can move into the bottom left one and just hold it really well, even if he does send those big guys over there. And then he still has the Skinks, so yeah, if he was going to burn one, I would say top right, but yeah, maybe not burning is the play. He has such strong board presence right now in general, right? He has more units on the board. He's been the one that's doing the damage, so
Yep.
Burning the top right, though, would make that fight up there completely pointless. So, and Marcus's big guys have to be in combat to be effective, where the Stegodons can really be wherever they want and still be effective.
For sure. And the Basildons too, right? It's tough matchup here a little bit for the Soulblight. And just want to note, they did score only 2 points last round, failing their battle tactic, getting hold 1, hold 2, not hold more here. So not a great turn of scoring. Monstrous Takeover again would have guaranteed them that battle tactic, but it really wouldn't have done much else for them. Leaving a monster back, or wouldn't have really been helpful. So yeah, that's tough. You almost wish they had done Monstrous Takeover turn 1, and could have maybe set up for a Ferocious Advance this turn, but tough position either way.
Yeah, if you're going to sit back on that back objective already, and if you know you're going to be in the back foot on this one, just guaranteeing those battle tactics is huge, right?
And probably would have been hopeful get Ferocious Advance out of the way so he could charge turn 2, but here Eli just didn't have to move up close enough to give him those easy charges.
Exactly. So we have some casting going on for Soulblight right now. So Wind of Death failed, and Killing Moon from Belladama was unbound. Once again, showing the magical dominance of Seraphon being on a +1 or +2 to unbinding.
Always tough to get spells off.
Oh yeah, it's between your LRL and Ridge's Seraphon back in AOS 2, it basically made me not bring any casters because you just couldn't get any stuff off. So I managed to deal, but sometimes it's hard, right? When you're a casting army in Soulblight, and we see now Mystic Shield also being unbound.
Yep. Yeah, they really, when those kind of balanced armies that are jacks of all trades, masters of none, they really rely on those their spells to be powerful. We see that with Daughters of Cain as well, and Sylvaneth. When against those magic dominant armies, it can be tough. And like you said, a good reason to bring no wizards, which I've polar opposites. Went from Lumineth after Deepkin with no wizards, playing a lot of Deepkin again now with no wizards. So
yeah. But Flaming Weapon did go off.
Oh, that's something.
Yep, that's something. So that will be on the Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon. So poised to do a bunch of damage upcoming here, which is long overdue, getting into now their third turn. And then we have Van Hel's Dance getting cast on the Graveguard.
Well, that'll help them at least, potentially kill the Skinks this turn. I'm not sure if they're within 3 for engagement range, or we'll have the chance to move and charge again.
And what guaranteed because of the horn if they are outside, which is nice. And it also just to update the viewers, the bottom left was burned, so now there's no play going around that objective.
Okay,
but maybe that will take some fire off of the Graveguard, and they can sneak up on those 2 Bastildon over there, because they in Elijah's turn might be focused more so on either the big targets up there of Manfred and the Zombie Dragon.
Yeah, very likely. It looks like the Necromancer, I didn't even realize where he was before, is in that terrain piece on the bottom left corner.
Yeah, he's hiding out there.
Yeah, I didn't see him hiding in there, blended in. But yeah, the Bastildons, I mean, it allows Eli to kind of castle up on his end. Just on his 2 objectives is all he needs to fight for now, right? He doesn't have to push anything else. He's got a lot of bodies and 2 monsters on his top right, but depending on what happens with the Soulblight, they got the double that they needed. We just got to see a good amount of damage out of them this turn, I think.
And they got some solid heals from Deathly Invocation and Invigorating. So we had, I think, a total of 1 dog returned and 5 Graveguard returned.
Solid. Definitely big for the Graveguard again, right? Wanting to top that unit up further.
Yeah, it's just a huge threat that now, even though there's no objective down there, it's slowly sneaking into the back line.
Yep.
So they'll have to keep an eye on them, and even a buffed Basti will have to focus all of its firepower on them if it wants to get rid of it. And because the Bastildons are so slow, they won't be able to outrun the Graveguard or move far enough away before they'll be able to catch up.
For sure, and with if you can keep those Bastildons busy for a turn, that could be critical if the Flesh Eaters are able, or Flesh Eaters, I see the Zombie Dragon. If the Soulblight are able to have a big turn here and do some damage up top. We've seen that engine with another big redeploy though.
Another 6.
Yes, that's huge.
Insane. You're lucky if you get 1 or 2 a tournament, but 2 within 3 turns of a game, that's huge. Yeah. But maybe a little bit too early. And one of the great things with redeploy is one of the disadvantages of it is that you should really wait for your opponent to make all of their moves first.
Yeah.
Because now that Stegodon is still in threat range of Manfred, a 9-inch charge, sure, for the zombie dragon, but Manfred is now right beside it.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's always helpful to wait for your opponent to make all their moves, especially if you know a big piece like that's going in.
Well, that's one of the great things too. There's a kind of a cat and mouse game with that, right? If there might be multiple places you could redeploy, but you never know, because if you don't do it on that first one, do you maybe put Manfred behind the zombie dragon and try and send him into the skinks, keep him outside 9? Could be an option to so he doesn't redeploy that engine or something. But here, yeah, it's gonna be Manfred's still getting into the engine, but I don't know if Manfred can do the work on his own. But one thing we talked about earlier on Elijah's turn is those skinks have no buffs on them and are looking mighty juicy to a big zombie dragon, I think.
Yeah, and honestly, even though Soulblight has been on the back foot kind of this entire game, taking out a Stegodon in that group of skinks right now could be huge.
Yeah.
Just absolutely huge. Stegodon would still be in combat, most likely with Manfred or the zombie dragon. Manfred gets a big enough charge, gets to squeak in between the two Stegodons, which lets the zombie dragon get into, and maybe with a pile into the engine of the gods and take that one out, because that is the more important one to get rid of.
Yeah. And we're not actually sure what battle tactic it was. Sounds like the players, there was some noise or something. It was a little muffled, but we couldn't tell or catch what their battle tactic was. So we'll only speculate here for a little bit, and probably find out at the end of the round. Maybe with being so close to that objective, a conquer could have been a reasonable option.
Maybe a Slay the Warlord. It seems like Marcus is kind of ballsy here, going with Bring It Down on the first one.
Yeah.
So maybe a Slay the Warlord now on the Engine of the Gods.
That's true. And it looks like we see 5 dogs marching down towards those Bastiladons. Not sure. Who knows? Maybe they'll charge in, actually. They could survive an Unleash Hell, and Bastiladons aren't crazy in combat. But if they could keep those Bastiladons, one of them at least, tied up, that could be pretty big. I don't think either of those Bastiladons are going to be in buff ranges for the next turn either way.
No, I think what he was expecting was to keep those skinks nearby, the skink heroes near the skinks for the buff. Yeah. So if they start getting eaten apart by the vampire lord,
yeah,
they're going to be in a rough spot. And it looks like we have a breath here, which with the mount trait, I believe, gives them a rerollable damage from that breath attack.
Okay, so yeah, just saw a couple of skinks killed there, so gonna see. Obviously, Seraphon's gonna have the CP for Inspiring Presence and whatnot.
Of course,
but,
of course.
The skinks don't have great saves, so anything with a little bit of rend can chew through them pretty quick.
Yeah, and we gotta remember Manfred has his aura of, I believe it's +1 to hit and +1 to wound.
That's spicy.
Which is huge, which is almost making that Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon 2s and 2s for all of its attacks. I think its bites are still on 4s, but hitting it incredibly well. So as long as he's rolling relatively average, that skink unit should be down to at least a useless effectiveness. Because once they drop, it's either below 10 or 15.
I think if it's 15, they lose an attack.
Yeah, they lose an attack in their shooting, which is almost like killing twice as many, in theory, just because they drop those attacks and they become a lot less scary.
Yep, and looks like Manfred made his charge in, just trying to, I don't know if he was trying to leave room for the zombie dragon to get in there as well, but you never know with a pile in, if the zombie dragon, that's his goal, goes into the other stag and then piles in around, he could also get into the stag or the engine of the gods. But I don't know. Do you want to leave just the wolves going into those skinks, or Belladonna too? I don't know if
she could do some damage, but definitely not enough to take out that big of a group of skinks. But once again, every little bit helps, right? That's 2 less attacks coming in. That's 2 less mortal wounds coming in, and even with a 6-up save, it's best to get rid of those as quickly as possible. And they're really the few that are in that buff range. So if you remove them, it will just be that bottom steggy right there that will get the buffs. So, and if that thing ends up getting eaten, then no buffs for anyone.
And it is going to be tough, I think. Here, I wonder if Manfred, if that is his plan to pile Manfred around, get the and then kind of get the Vampire Lord into the engine as well. He's going to have to be really careful with that pile in to also block off the other Stegadon from piling in to block off the Vampire Lord.
Yes.
40 chests there, but just with the alternating activations here, it's going to be interesting to see where he goes first.
But luckily, it seems like he's making all of his charges this time.
Yeah, that's big.
Yeah, we just saw both Belladonna and the Wolves getting in. And then I think we're rolling for those middle pack of Wolves right now, but it looks like it was either a 5 or a 6. So not going in with that middle pack, I believe. Oh, nope, sorry, we are finishing the charge roll still of... Actually, I'm not sure what that... It looks like he was about to pull a wolf, then didn't pull a wolf.
Maybe looks like that might be deadly terrain actually. So maybe they were just
yes,
seeing if they were within an inch or whatnot. So it could be doing some rolls over there.
Yes, it's been so long. I played with terrain rules. Don't seem to come up too often. So
I know we up here in Canada, at least in Ontario, don't often play with them. I mean, a lot of events, even when I was down at Slambo, I think only 2 of my 5 opponents wanted to play with the terrain rules. So interesting. Not super popular.
Seraphon do get them inherently, even though it was fact out in most cases. If you aren't playing with the mystical terrain rules, it was fact that you don't get it. Not the biggest deal in the world, but if the terrain, I think it's even just within their territory, it counts as deadly for you, and then if it's within their territory, it counts as mystical for them.
Yeah.
So that's how we're getting the deadly there.
Yeah. Well, it looks like they do have the dice out there too. So.
Yep.
Yeah, but interesting combat. Where would you activate first, Zach? What do you think?
Yeah, I can't necessarily speak to Manfred's tankiness necessarily, but I would probably go with the zombie dragon first and just wipe out. Once again, I probably would have went the zombie dragon into the skinks then over the stegodon, but I am not inside the player's head. But I would go with the zombie dragon first no matter what, and probably go into that stegodon there. But for our monstrous actions, looks like Manfred roared and the Vampire Lord Titanic dueled. And it looks like Manfred is activating first with that pile-in.
So
maybe he is doing what we were discussing before
Yeah.
and going to try to get that zombie dragon in. But if then that Stegodon activates, it could pile out of range. But once again, that's a disadvantage in this 4D chess game, because if that Stegodon activates, it's activating into a unit that has already activated, leaving either, most likely in this case, a zombie dragon to go in unabated and uninjured.
Yeah, that's true. Lots of options here. It'd be interesting. Oh, that was a painful wound roll. All I saw was 4 1s.
Yep.
So that's a rough one. Not what you want to see. Soulblight again, looking for the damage here this round, trying to, put a big punch. They're finally getting to Seraphon in a big way. So yeah, we did see some monstrous actions taken. The Stegadon Titanic dueled against Manfred. Manfred roared the Stegadon. The Vampire Lord did Titanic duel against the engine. So I'm not sure if I was assuming the red one was the Engine of the Gods, but perhaps it's the green one.
Yeah, I thought the red one was the Engine of the Gods as well, but maybe it is the green one. It looks like he does have a little bit more going on his back, so
always hard to think. Yeah, very similar. They're similar models, right? So
yeah, and it looks like Manfred, unfortunately, is not rolling the best on his attack rolls coming in. Look like a lot of 6 dice are being rolled, and then 1 is being rolled for the save. So He doesn't, unfortunately, even with the +1/+1, he's getting what he wanted out of that combat.
Yep. And that is unfortunate. You hate to
But
see
now
it.
we will see the
Those
decision from Elijah to see what he will now choose to pile in.
yeah. But sounds like he's starting to roll, so maybe not even piling in at all. Probably, I'm going to assume here activating with the Stadion first. He's only rolling 3 dice, so I assume that's not the Stanch. Yeah, it's probably the various profiles on that the Stadion, which then this green one in the center against the Zombie Dragon or Manfred could be going into either, but assuming that is the engine of the gods. See how much damage he can put on.
Get it for something that's only like 265 points. That thing can pump out damage with all of its mount traits and command traits and the Kotal's Claw buff, giving them just so many more attacks.
And it's a priest. And,
yeah. But yeah, it's the damage that I can put out, especially once again against something that's not super tanky like a Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon. It's not a Kragnos, it's not a Stonehorn, it's not a Turtle. Like, it doesn't have that insane save to be able to take that sort of damage. It's only at 1 rend, but that's what hurts the most when you only have a 3 up or 4 up save with really no buffs, right? So
yeah, and sounds like that the engine. So the engine must have been the green one. The engine dealt 0 damage to the Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon. So we were just talking about how much damage it could do, but it did 0.
Yeah, it has like 4 damage profiles and like 8 different profiles it can attack with. Not that much, but it has a bunch. But yeah, at least he got lucky on that turn, which is once again something that he needed. And it looks like he is piling into that other Stegodon right there.
Yeah, interesting choice.
So maybe it was broken ranks then on that Stegodon as the battle tactic.
That could have been a good one. Yeah, it's a good shout as well. I mean, the redeploy like you did last round, right? Redeploying always worthwhile if it can help you to deny a battle tactic. But yes. It's unfortunate actually because it's almost forcing Marcus to put his damage, in places he wouldn't necessarily really want it to go, right?
Yeah. Sometimes battle tactics can work complete in your favor and be exactly what you want to do, but other times it's just like, I have to do this. I don't really have any other choice. I'm gonna have to do it this way, and it can just backfire on your plans, especially if you end up not getting the tactic.
Yeah, and again, we saw, like we were talking about how those skinks were super vulnerable right now, but if that unit, survives, again, more than 15 models in a significant way, we could see a life swarm come out. We could see that unit get buffed up and still be super effective. That's a great shout. We have a hawk in the chat, Incomplete Sphere. That is a great shout. So Eli is recording stuff, obviously on his scorecard that we can see. It was a BR in round 2 and a BID this turn, probably standing for broken ranks and bring it down. So may have gotten those in reverse order last time. Maybe it was broken ranks on those 10 stinks last turn, which is why it, from those graveyard, maybe it was a little more, makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so bring it down here must be on that Stegodon, who was more central, more in the way until that 6-inch redeploy brought him so far out to the edge. But huge shout to Incomplete Sphere, great username in the chat, for noticing that little detail there. So appreciate the tip.
And it looks like after both of those combats from both Manfred and the Zombie Dragon, the Stegodon is left with 1 wound, and the Vampire Lord, splitting his attacks, left the Engine of the God on 2 wounds.
Oh no. Oh, that's painful.
Oh man.
That's gonna deny the battle or lose the battle tactic. There would obviously be a monster kill point there. Taking the engine down would have been huge too.
Yeah, because
Um,
now that's one less monster point that he can get. Since we're gonna be going into round 4 and 5, so
yeah,
I
that's
guess
so
it is
painful.
top of the turn though. So if those guys stay in combat, they are in a danger zone.
Yep,
So
yep,
potentially can still get a monster point from there.
yep. And but we know there's a heal, a prayer around. The Emerald Life Swarm is still yet to come out, so we could see the 3d3 healing up to one of those
Yep.
Stegodons, probably going on the Engine of the Gods.
And actually up to 43 because the Engine of the Gods does have a heal prayer and it's in an AoE, so it won't just be on the engine itself, it will also be on the other Stegodon over there because I assume that's wholly within 12.
Okay.
So
Eh,
it'll be a
yeah.
bunch of healing coming in, so won't be too much of an issue.
And actually, we do have Eli in the chat tonight. Shout out to Eli, who one of the players in this game, and also a great opponent for me in round one. Just confirming, it was broken ranks the previous turn, and it was actually on the Stegodon, not the Skinks, which is why it was failed with that big 6 redeploy that he got. Yeah, always painful. And Ridge also in the chat lending some Seraphon knowledge, making some predictions of what he thinks is going to see happen in this game.
Yes, he has an educated opinion on what cursed buffed skinks can do to a
Yeah.
unit, and he
Yep.
is not wrong.
Yeah, so painful. Oh, you always root for the underdog, right? I mean, I always gravitate towards rooting for the underdog. And here, the Soulblight were definitely on the back foot in this mission. Those first 2 turns were pretty strong for Eli, taking out a couple big units from the Soulblight. You just wish he could have done that, a couple more damage, seen 2 of those big monsters go down.
Oh, like once again, imagine how huge that would be. Both Stegodons going down. Skinks would have been taking less damage, but their general and the other Steggy going down. That's a majority of their melee damage because Basties don't do too much of melee. Skinks can, but those 2 Steggies going down would be huge.
For sure.
And we have the Skinks going in there, and we can see that so Belladama took 0 damage because they split up their attacks, and I think about 4 dogs pulled over there from the
Yeah.
Skinks.
Okay. And she might have could have got some wounds on Belladama too, but could have been the pass off, also passing those to the dogs as well. Because she does have that bodyguard rule with the wolves that can protect her.
Extremely helpful.
Yep.
Extremely helpful.
Yep. Yep.
She's such a great hero. Very valuable, great utility. Not a super heavy hitter, but definitely a great piece to have.
One of the better spellcasters in the army.
Yes, yeah, for sure. With a great spell as well with the Bad Moon.
Yeah. Oh, it's gonna. And Olivier mentioning in the chat as well, thinking that could have been very helpful to put that damage into the Skinks this turn, and just trying to tie up those 2 Stegodons, who we saw, at least the engine so far, hasn't done much damage. I don't think the other Stegodon has fought yet, but the engine definitely, did nothing to those armor saves of the Vampire Lord.
Yeah, and once again, at least in my experience, I've been playing with a lot of big monsters in this case. What I maybe done in hindsight is throw Manfred in, give him Finest Hour, maybe try to chuck Mystic Shield on him, wrap up those 2 Steggies in combat, send the Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon into the Skinks, away from the 2 Steggies, and then the Steggies will just basically have to be focused on Manfred, but also maybe saving Finest Hour for the shooting that will be coming up. So,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Skinks were the prime target here. They're the heaviest damage dealers. Though getting rid of the Steggies would be nice. Those Skinks are just so dangerous. Think I've been probably shot by over 1,000 Skink shots, specifically from Ridge.
Oh yeah.
So it is a priority thing that you learn from playing against the army. But yeah, it is always tough when there's just so many strong threats on the board, right?
Yeah. And Ridge mentioned also a huge point that that we all know but haven't really talked about too much tonight is this is Thunder Lizards, so hard to allocate and plan your damage out when everything is reduced by 1. So all that multi damage from Manfred and the Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, it's hard to gauge, right? And also a tip from Eli: a lot of the attacks he had to split was actually because of the ranges, and only getting the longer range attacks into that steady on in the back that he was going for. In the end, both brought both monsters to near death, so very, very unfortunate for him.
Yeah, I mean, if it played out exactly like Manfred, we saw the rolls there, the 4 1s on the wound roll, that probably would have made the difference right there. At least getting one of those steggies down. So
Yeah,
it
exactly.
is too bad. If going in there, like, it seems like you should have got at least 1 steggy. So
Yeah,
I don't think the plan was ill thought out at all. I think it was actually a solid plan. But splitting the tax is probably the greatest curse you can put against yourself in Age of Sigmar. I think
yeah,
every Age of Sigmar player has suffered the splitting attacks and leaving the things on 1 wound that you want
oh
to
yeah,
kill. But
and
in this
yeah,
case, yes, it was forced,
yeah.
unfortunately, here.
But crippling, yeah, as you said, those 4 1s when we saw that wound roll from Manfred, that that alone should have and very likely could have been the difference of getting this battle tactic, which it looks like we will see Marcus fail. But all is not lost. The Graveguard have killed that unit of Stinks on the bottom left. We're seeing a couple Stinks go down. I think to Belladama, and just a little bit, a couple of combats left here to finish up in the top of round 3.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Once again, from the top down, it's a little bit harder to see if the Skinks will be in range of that zombie dragon for potential shooting. But if they aren't, that would be huge. Because yes, losing Belladama would suck, but having those shots not going to the zombie dragon is even more important.
Yeah, it does look like there are. I would guess they are within 3 from this angle, but can't be 100% sure, as you said. Yeah, it'll be interesting. Obviously, could be a potentially devastating turn here for Seraphon in response. Both those Bastildons, we thought Marcus might send the dogs in to try and tie them up, keep their shooting, relatively unimpactful on Eli's turn, but they didn't charge him in. They could have died even with that, but yeah.
And Elijah
right now,
brings up a good point in the chat because that Stegodon that's all the way back in that back corner moved 12 inches in his opponent's turns. So
yeah,
just being able to redeploy that much, it does hurt, and it's not something that you can even really think to plan for, right?
or account for, or yeah.
It's just so rare. It's a 1 in 36 chance to even get that movement. So
Yeah, and you can't do much about it. And the thing is, it's like often not when you're outside of 3, your opponent often doesn't bother to redeploy. But when you're have as many CP as Seraphon typically does, you're willing to spend it, right? If I roll 1, I just have more CP.
yeah, exactly.
Like,
it's not an issue.
Exactly, they are so CP rich that they're not stressed about spending them there. It's worth the risk, or worth the command point there for them. So sounds like players are just trying to talking things out and figuring, potentially measuring for that objective. Failed battle tactic here, and it is sounds like the Soulblight did take control of that objective. So they will get hold 1, hold 2, hold more, storing them 3 points for the round. Putting them up to 10, so only 2 points ahead. Isn't a big lead here. Having the turn advantage this round.
Yeah. So what do you think Marcus does in this case? Do you think he starts kind of splitting his attacks into targets, or do you think he's gonna focus and try to bring maybe a couple things down?
For Eli with the Seraphon?
Yeah, sorry, Eli.
I think he's trying to bring down the big threats, right? You know, with those Bastillodons both being free to shoot whatever they want, I think, you know, if we see something get finest outward, you shoot at the other big monster, right? If you get a curse off with the engine of the gods, you go for whatever got the you got the curse on, which is probably you want to do that on the zombie dragon. So there's a couple things I think in the hero phase here for Seraphon that could dictate where we see, all the damage and the target allocation go. Yeah, it's gonna be a tough one here, I think, for Marcus to try and claw it back, but you never know. Dice are still dice, right?
Dice are still dice. That curse can miss.
Yep.
The Emerald Life Swarm could be miscast. There's a bunch of stuff that can obviously go either way, and big plays can be made.
Oh, for sure. And sorry to say it, Eli, but we always gotta root for the underdog. Always want to see strapping right down till the end. But here, well played game by both players. But I think just Seraphon here with this mission have had the advantage. Eli, Marcus did have a chance with that double 2 into 3, but again, those two big redeploys really hurt his chances of getting in there, getting those battle tactics. Those two failed battle tactics, unfortunately.
Yep, and Broken Ranks will be the tactic selected on the top right set of dogs. They are the ones just right by Belladama. So
yeah, makes sense. Probably an easy target kill, and do it with the Skinks alone, potentially in combat once they're all buffed up. Also doesn't tip his hat into what monster he's going to go for if he wants to also try and double down on and take down a monster, which is potentially very viable.
Exactly.
Yeah, we'll see here. Hard to tell with the terrain there. Looks like there's probably at least 4 dogs, if not a couple more bases underneath the terrain.
Yeah, and assuming that they're in buff ranges, I think we have the 2 Skink heroes, either in the temple or just outside the temple at that top right corner of it. That looks to be within their 18-inch buff ranges. So
Yep.
For both Hand of Glory and the staff.
Yep. Always nice to have those buffs, and when you're in the temple and you can measure from the temple, that's quite handy as well to just make that range and aura even bigger.
And once again, so I think the temple will be on a 2-up targeting terrain pieces now that are have enemies in combat. So they pick that L shape that's kind of in the center of the madness over there, and it looks like 1 wound to Belladama and 1 wound to the dogs.
Another potentially 3 saves, it looked like, to those dogs in the center, and taking all 3 wounds.
Yep.
And another dog goes down. So it must have been Belladama first, took the damage and passed some off to the dogs, and the dogs got hit again directly from the Realm Shaper. So very tough. But lots of... Sorry.
Looking like just 1 dog there now with maybe a wound on it if that die marker is a wound marker. So should be no problem to get rid of that.
I think there are a couple more bases in the inside of the L.
Oh, okay.
The inner corner. Hard to tell again from the top down. I just see that ruddy brown color down there a little bit. So it looks like there might be 3 dogs left. Could be more, could be less. Hard to tell from the terrain. But again, enough that you could confidently probably finish them off in combat with the Skinks.
Yeah, you would think. And it looks like actually Comet's Call failed. So here you go. Right. There's dice, even with all those pluses to cast.
And the reroll.
And the reroll. One of the better spells that Seraphon have in their wheelhouse fails. So that's one thing going for Marcus here. But we have Stellar Tempest, which is a mortal wound per model spell. Then I believe it's each 6-up is a mortal. And it ended up doing 4 mortal wounds and killing another 2 doggos there.
Yeah, and he did slide that dice forward So I do believe there are at least 2 or 3 dollars left in there. So and it is a hard unit to chew through, but when you have a big unit of stinks in there, and all these chip wounds that we're seeing coming out. I mean, it actually hurts kind of that Belladama is doing the pass off, right? Because it's actually getting more damage onto those wolves. Not that he would have a problem getting broken ranks here with all the damage output that he has, but it may allow Elijah to put more of that damage into some of the other targets.
Yeah, and Ridge actually corrected me here in the chat. It is a 5-up. I forgot what Seraphon, whatever you think is what it should be, you add at least a +1 to that to make it better. So it is a 5-up for the mortals on Stellar Tempest.
Oh, always painful.
Yeah, and then a little bit more casting here. So Engine got the Mystic Shields, and Life Swarm actually got Unbound, which will mean those guys will still be relatively low because it will just be the heal prayer, and then you're probably banking on rolling for the heal again with the Steggy. The mortal wounds would be helpful, but I feel like the heal would be more impactful. So maybe double tapping the Steggy this time, the Engine of the Gods, to do its its prayer, or not its prayer, but its ability twice.
Yeah, because the AoE mortal wounds would be absolutely fantastic here. The summon is always interesting for bodies and screens, but when you're already engaged like this, you have to put it so far out of the way that there's probably not much room to put it actually with where the different units of dogs are. You got the summon off, and also the Realm Shaper engine being in the way. Yeah, it'll be an interesting one here.
It looks like those skinks got the hot buffs. We got Hand to Glory on them and the staff.
Yep.
So they'll be re-rolling 1s, and 6s are mortals on the wound roll.
Plus, also Starstone Staff and Serpent Staff, so I think also the run, shoot, and charge, and +1 to save.
All the abilities.
I know.
And that's only like half of them.
The Seraphon abilities, each of them does 3 different things for no reason. But that's okay.
And yep, Curse did go off and gets put on the Vampire Lords. Probably one of the better prayers in the game, but it's just so swingy and can be so unreliable. You have to put it on a priest. Priests are usually these 5-wound guys that are pretty slow, have to go on foot, can get sniped out. But you can chuck it on a 12-wound Stegodon. It's pretty safe. So
and very impactful, especially with Thunder Lizards for Coalesced and Seraphon, with all their various terrain rules or whatever. I do believe still get +1 to their prayer chanting rolls. So that, not that I think the Stegodon is close enough to any terrain, but just a note.
Yeah, that's just another one. Adam, yes, in the chat, what units are giving those buffs? That'll be the Skink Priest and the Skink Star Priest.
And then Hand of Glory, from the Star Priest as well.
Yep.
Lots coming out here, and we've seen obviously a little bit of movement. Those Bastildons shuffling back. Everything else was in combat. It looks like it's staying in combat, and we're into shooting already. So a bit brave there, perhaps, with those Citadons, still alive, but low on wounds. But
that might be a tough decision, right? It's just like, do you pull them out and then hope for the double, or do you keep an M and try to get some damage? Because they could go down here if the rolls don't go their way, right?
Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, it looks like one of the Bastildons shot into the dogs, killing 2 here, or sorry, what we're rolling right now. Spoilers from the future. But yeah, it's gonna be so. I wonder if you just leave the Skinks. I kind of thought he might leave it for the Skinks to finish them up in combat. But who knows? Maybe he's gonna try to get more into the Zombie Dragon in Belladama.
Yeah, he'll only get a few, but then he'd still have the Skink shooting with all their buffs. Yeah, so it's probably for the best. maybe shoot at something else like the Basties and then get the Skinks in. Engine did roll a 12 and got the mortal wound. Got it when it needed it, and ended up dealing 1 damage to Belladama, or sorry, 1 damage to the Vampire Lord and 2 damage to Belladama.
And there are those.
And then also,
sorry, those 2 dogs I mentioned earlier going down now.
yeah. So there they go. A couple chip shots here and there from the engine as well. And here come the Skinks.
See some big rolls, lots of dice coming up, I'm sure.
Yep. There's going to be a load. I know when Ridge started pulling up all those dice and counting them out, I was always scared. So I'm sure Marcus is feeling the same, just waiting for those Skinks to come in and watching those dice get counted with all those buffs. So it will definitely be a spooky one.
And so we did see the Bastildons finish off the unit of dogs there. And actually, that's a great, another point. While you could have, put the Bastildons into another target potentially and, for a little more efficiency with damage allocation maybe, it does get them the monster point, right? So that's noteworthy as well. And while, the Seraphon looked to be in a pretty solid position, again, with the victory points being the first tiebreaker after wins, of course, every VP matters, right, in this tournament. So.
Yeah. There's plenty of times where even just 1 or 2 can mean you're ahead or tied of someone else, and then strength of schedule or whatever the third tiebreaker is puts you ahead of them.
Yep.
So every little bit, especially with VP, I find counts.
Yep. And here, both these players are on 3-0. This is the first game of day 2, so round 4. So both undefeated, still very much in the hunt, even with a loss. Want to store as many points as you can. And yeah, obviously the 2 battle tactics that, from those massive redeploys, losing those 4 points really hurts. And could have seen Marcus up 6 points, but I even think the broken ranks on the Satyrdon might have been a little bit ambitious, I think, on that round 2 with Manfred, and I guess maybe if both Manfred and the Zombie Dragon got in, but they were just so far away, I think.
Yeah,
that was always going to be tough.
It was a tough decision. Maybe even like a metamorphosis from Belladama or the Necromancer. Actually, no, that won't work for Monstrous Takeover. Never mind. But maybe more secure objective in that case, or more secure battle tactic, just because it can be so hard when you're already so far away, right?
Yeah. Yep, can definitely be tough. We're seeing lots of dice rolling now, so I'm assuming this is the Skinks activating. Let's see. Sounds like they did use all-out attack and are targeting the Vampire Lord.
Yeah, solid 42 shots, I believe, there.
Must have just over, 21 Skinks then left. I don't think they get any bonuses for leader, so that would make sense. We're seeing a bunch of dice collected for either the save rolls or the ward rolls. I would think the ward at this point. This could be saved first. Ooh. Oh,
and he goes. Probably the biggest threat on the table is now gone.
So it sounds like 17 mortal wounds, or 17 damage. I think 3 were saved potentially, so 14 damage. That's exactly to the wound. Takes down the zombie dragon. I believe it is 14 wounds, right? So that is a painful one, and that's gonna be I don't think there's going to be much opportunity to recover from that. As we talked about in the chat, Manfred is going to be able to dance around here a little bit, potentially run away from combat. But you gotta think.
Could get you a tactic here or there. Yeah. Maybe, I'm not sure what the game plan is from here on out. Now there's too many strong pieces. The Skinks are still alive. Both Stegodons will most likely still be alive. Both Bastildons will still be alive. So maybe a bit of damage control here to try to keep that grand strat and maybe try to get a couple more tactics if you can.
What
And
was
just stay up in those victory points.
Just gonna pull that Soulblight list up. It looks like surprise sorcery. Yeah, was the Soulblight battle tactic. So yeah, you gotta assume he's gonna pull Manfred out here. There is 2 rounds left in the game. What do you think? Do you like? I know he has still Monstrous Takeover available to him. So here we have seen Manfred pop out, going to the center of the table. Actually, thought he might be a little more defensive with him.
Yeah, just because for the potential double turn as well, right?
Yep.
You never know, and he's an important piece. You have your 3 spellcasters left right now in the Necromancer, Belladonna, and Manfred. It might actually be tough for him to take it out, but I would have pulled him out of Skink range at least.
At this point, maybe cut your losses.
Yeah. It's always try the best to play for the win. But once you see that you're pretty hard pressed and it's going to be kind of tough, then it is a good time to just say like, hey, I'm going to try to get my tactics. I'm going to get my grand strat.
All the VP you can.
Exactly. But hey, sometimes going for the win is going for the win, right? And
Yep. And hey, we have seen miracles happen before. I've been
dice or dice.
Oh yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I think great shout in the chat from Adam again. I was thinking Monstrous Takeover. Another potential one that may be achievable is a Savage Spearhead. It does have those Graveguard, looks like already in position for it. Necromancer as well probably could do that, so that could be a round 4 battle tactic, and save that Monstrous Takeover for round 5 depending on priorities. But again, I'm not a Soulblight player yet. Looking forward to it, playing with these guys some. But Manfred definitely is, not the most resilient to some shooting. Not like he is in combat at least. I might have played a little more defensive with him with that teleport.
Yeah, it's his one counter, right? Amazing against combat armies. Get him stuck in, get him trapped, make sure they can't do anything, and then bail. But against a heavy shooting list, he loses a lot of effectiveness that he would have as a control piece in the game. And I think, are seeing the Skinks go into Belladonna right now with all-out attack.
And I wonder if these are Skinks with the shields rather than the clubs, so they don't have as many attacks in combat. But yeah, we're seeing some saves, some wards, and looks like Belladonna only takes 2 damage, which is not too bad at all.
Yeah, that's actually kind of surprising from that grouping of Skinks. Maybe they did only have their daggers and not the Moonstone clubs, which tend to be the strong combat piece that at least lets you get 4s and 4s, so you'd be 3s and 4s, re-rolling 1s to hit, and then 6s are mortals.
Well, no, Elijah is correcting us in the chat, saying they do have clubs. Which is, again, the more common thing with the big blocks of Skinks. But
so that's surprising.
Very little damage there.
So few got through.
Yeah. And especially, with the potential mortals, right? Thinking mortals on 6s, but Belladonna is still alive. Seraphon's gonna have a solid turn of storing here, getting their battle tactic with a monster. Sounds like we're just seeing little final things in combat. But what are we thinking here? It's gonna be they'll take that top objective, probably get so they got their battle tactics, so that's 5 points with the monster for a 6th point, and monster kill for 7 points this round, I think.
Yeah,
what we're gonna be looking at.
That looks like that's what it's gonna be.
That will be a painful one. Especially, you think, again, with those 2 battle tactics, it could have been a 1-point game here if that is indeed what we see scored for Seraphon. But those 2 battle tactics dropped. Again, just does mean going to be a potential big lead here for Seraphon at the end of the turn.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see the players do with this priority role.
Interesting question for you, Zach. How many salamanders have you seen since um the battle scroll update?
That's a actually pretty funny question. I have another local player who isn't Ridge who plays a lot of Seraphon, and he brought a bunch of salamanders, and I played a game against him and just racked up so many points.
Oh
And
yeah.
he was just like, "Yep, I don't think I'm gonna bring salamanders out again."
Yeah.
So it was basically a one and done. I think that was the push to make Sally's no longer be taken so easily, because at least with Bastiladon with Solar Engine, it's still so hard to kill.
Yeah.
For Sally's, you can really blow them up, and they're usually taken in packs of 2, and once you get into them, they're gone.
Yeah.
So yeah, at least for me, only once.
Yeah.
But how about you?
I literally can't say, I've been to what, 2 GTs, 3 GTs since that update, which is 20 bit. I don't think I've seen salamanders at one of them,
Yeah.
which is, probably a solid 200 players plus. But yeah, so very few Seraphon players are taking those salamanders still.
Yeah, they were super effective. I mean, they took out they came out way below the points they should have been, and then got 2 huge point hikes, and then were still extremely effective, and then needed one more nerf, I think, to just not see them anymore. At least with the introduction of Thunder Lizards and their effectiveness. So.
Yeah. And as Olivier says, Seraphon is a mean army. So it is 7 points here at the end of the round. Sounds like our players are going to. I'm not sure if they have rolled priority or they're just talking out the game from here.
Yes, I think they did, and Soulblight won it.
Okay.
So they're probably just discussing tactics right now. It seems like they are at least talking out the game for the moment, but it can always go either way in terms of if you want to play it out or not, depending on what you're actually discussing in your talk out. But
Yeah. Yeah, so it sounds like it is, Soulblight do win the turn going into round 4. But I think it's, again, like we were talking about, just scraping for battle tactics at this point. So, yeah, I don't know. Zach is, like, looking at this game in hindsight as we kind of wrap things up over the next few minutes, do you think there's much else the Soulblight player could have done? Were there any, plays that you would have done differently or different choices you would have made?
really, no. I came into this just not thinking of the battle plan's impact that it would have on Soulblight, not being an army that I see commonly in tournaments and not one that I play myself. Uh, the general slowness of the army, and with the lack of zombies that can just eat damage, especially mortal wound damage doesn't mean that much to them, right? So um, having those 2 disadvantages set against them from the beginning is really tough. Really, the only thing I could think of doing is going into those skinks instead. But just the way that the game went, I think he was in a really tough place right from the start against a top tier army in Thunder Lizards that is optimized pretty well and well written list. So yeah, I think they were tough. How about you? I didn't really see any faults at play for the most part.
Yeah, no, again, the only thing I don't remember what the drops were for these 2 armies, but maybe those 2 big heroes, I know they were behind the building originally for safety of potential line of sight blocking. I don't know if he could have deployed them a little closer so that, he, like, on his second turn, there we see the handshake from the players. Always great to see. Great sportsman down there in Texas. It was a great community. But, maybe where he wouldn't have been so far away on his turn 2. But then you never know in the order of drops with deployment. Maybe the Bastiladons weren't down yet. Those are the longer range threats.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
just
you
being
put
in
yourself a little too close, you're in range, right?
Yeah, but being in that back corner, was, again, we saw they didn't even get in till turn 3, and then didn't get the turn they needed. Partially also due to the big redeploys from Eli. But here it is going to be a big win for Seraphon. Sounds like a 30-19 victory after the players talked it all out for a final. Yeah, a big win.
And a respectable loss score, in all honesty, just due to how the turns played out, not being able to get into combat, kind of losing some capturing pieces and key pieces relatively early on in the game, well, after the halfway point. So still being able to score 19 is very solid and respectable.
100%.
Loss.
Definitely agree. Yeah. Tough one again for, mission and matchup, I think, for Seraphon was a little bit in their favor. Hard one for the Soulblight, but great to see. Unfortunately, didn't get to see what I was hoping out of the skeletons, as we talked about at the start of the game.
Yeah, they got shot right off. Eh?
Yeah. But I mean, hey, they soaked, some Bastillodon shooting for a little bit. Freed it up from other stuff, though I don't, at that time, that's the thing, there wasn't really other, targets presented at the time, so.
Yeah, and I know we were kind of rooting for the underdog here as it is, and obviously rooting against Ridge's army, because we always have to root against Ridge when we can.
Yep.
But Elijah played a great game. He set up his board really well. He had the buffs where he needed them. He put pressure where he needed to put pressure to win the game.
Yep.
And played a very solid game and a strong match to secure the victory.
Yep, for sure. And this is so this was round 4. Seeing Elijah go 4-0 so far, and be in the mix next round for in the finals, in the final round. So in the mix for those, hunting for those podium spots. So I am excited. On Wednesday, we are going to be bringing you guys the streaming the round 5 coverage, which was the top table final game. Very exciting matchup with 2 big players. So if you are excited for that or interested in that, definitely tune in Wednesday or check it out. It'll be on the channel afterwards after it goes live. But that'll be a big one. So excited to talk about that. To have Ridge on streaming with me, and he'll get to make all the tracks back and use that we made at his expense. So yeah, I think Zach, unless there's anything else you want to say, we can wrap things up here.
Yeah, thanks guys for sticking around and watching these tourney reps. They are fun to do, and they do provide kind of a different experience than traditional battle reports. It's great that we can add this diversity to the channel and show this top level play for those interested in the competitive scene and see how these players play at these larger tournaments.
Sure, and yeah, like you say, great to see 2 excellent players playing, at the top of their game. But I think that'll be it for tonight, guys. So we'll wrap everything up. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again soon. Another battle report.